floral motifs on the window frames and
Welcome to Happiness in the City. This is Barbara, and we are here in this beautiful city of Cambridge. And today I'd like to focus our attention on something that is very important for us, and that is the understanding of politics in the traditions that we inherited from our ancestors. It's not easy to do because the focus of today's politics is on conflict and on money. So it is very difficult to even have conversations today in the context of politics. Civil authority, very important, because civil authorities organize our interactions within the city. So it's very important that there is goodness in those institutions and people, and that there is nobility and virtue in the decision making. So when you look today at conversations in politics, the focus is so much on the wills that would prevail. Elections, voting to pass certain laws, and endless conflicts around it. So I thought that maybe we are not doing it right, because it creates so much uncertainty and chaos that people lose joy of life. And people also lose a sense of stability. So I've been asking the Lord for direction on this matter, because just like you, I've been used to the current ways, and I just know that there must be a better way to lead political life in the city, but I don't know how to do it and what it is. So I've been searching for it. And one of the sources are Psalms that were written by a politician, King David. But he had his communication established with God of Israel, with the Lord. And today in the world we have Israel, but we also have more than 2 billion Christians who read the Psalms, read the Bible, have connection to the Lord, and they just don't know how to apply it to the city relationships and to civil authorities. And as I've been looking for answers to this question, I realized that problems around that disconnection between our conversations about God and the Lord and the Lord's words and the city are much deeper than I thought at first. In other words, it's not easy to just transform our ways without looking at hundreds of years that led to that transformation in our financial and political arrangements that excluded God from that decision making. So one of the things that we have to do is to have that understanding that it's not our fault that we are doing it the way we are doing it. We are doing it also because we don't know how not to do it. We are sort of confined in the limits that were forced on us. It wasn't always like this. I've been looking a lot at relations between priests and civil authorities in Constantinople. And this was empire that lasted 1,200 years. So they did something right. Continuity of political stability for 1,200 years. And that was prior to Roman heritage that lasted a long time too, but they dissociated themselves from it by moving to Byzantium to create Constantinople and Christian Roman Empire. And I realized how little I was taught on that topic. I was taught a lot about many other things in political thinking, but not about that. So I'm trying to understand what happened that such powerful stabilizing force that created extensive reach to bring peace and happiness and stability to countries of diverse backgrounds. How was it possible that we ignore that heritage? One of the things that we need today is to understand that identity should not, individual identity should not define the way other people run. We have to accept each other. We are born to a certain generation and all kinds of people around us, and they have to accept us and we have to accept them. So one of the foundations is to know that individual identity is part of larger life within a country, and the country has to have mechanisms that would stabilize it and create harmonious interactions between people so that they can live, that they don't have to be in fear of losing their lives. So traditionally, political authority was to create those interconnecting ways, and one of the contemporary manifestations of it is internet. The whole world is on internet, and people learn to get along on internet because of the benefits that we have from it. And different countries do all kinds of things that are necessary for them to harmonize internet within their territories, but by and large there's an agreement that this larger network is a good thing. So why is it that we don't know how to do it in politics? We don't know it. I don't know it, and I am ABD in politics from MIT. So I have huge knowledge on political science matters, but we don't have any current ways to reconnect to that thinking from the past that looks at politics as a place that as an activity that allows people to live together in peace, to live their lifespans in peace and have their families, and then they can have their houses and procreate and just be happy, go about their own daily life. So why is it that we don't have that focus? And I'm asking those questions. I don't know myself. But when I contemplate the Psalms, I see that one of the problems that we have today is that politicians don't understand that God is interested in politics. He is ultimate politician. He is the leader of his own kingdom of God, right? So he is the ultimate authority on how to create perfection among many people, many creations, many things coexisting together in one kingdom. Let's start today in Psalm 68. The king says, "Let God arise. Let his enemies be scattered. Let them also that hate him flee before him." So here we have, let God arise. So the king who runs his people commands, let God arise. And what do we have today throughout the world? Forget talking about God. Quote, quote. In other words, contemporary politicians suppress presence of the Lord. Why are they doing it? It really doesn't make any sense, concerning that the benefits would be great if they did this. So we have to look into the sources of that restraint, that blockage, that fear, and then see how we can dismantle it and have governments that are happy to connect to the throne of the Lord. There is no limit here in authority of this kind, civil authority. There is no limit of who can address the Lord. Anyone can, because of the very fact of wielding authority and power over people. So this is really something that we should consider. In the United Nations, it's unthinkable to start all the conversations with this command, let God arise. But it would be great if they did it. What about the banks, the financial institutions? Let God arise. Because when God arises, life comes with this wisdom, direction, knowledge, all of those things that make authority in civil places know what to do. Then King David also commands, let his enemies be scattered. So, who would be the enemies of the Lord? It's a good question. Is he talking here about first commandment? In other words, is he talking about other gods? And is he trying to tell us that in order for God to be present, we have to focus on him, not on God's enemies? we should really think about it, because we think that God's enemies are people who don't believe in God. But here it is profoundly stated that that may be gods who hate other gods, who hate the Lord. And if we suppress presence of the Lord, then those enemies of the Lord come into this place. So that may be one of the reasons we don't have presence of the Lord in the governments, because we don't know how to call on the Lord first. Let God arise. Secondly, he also says, let them also that hate him flee before him. So who are those? Again, I think at that level, he's talking about all of those beings that want to replace the Lord. So I think we have to look at it really wisely, because why should I be ruled by some strange creature from hell when I can be ruled by God himself, Adonai himself? So that would be a much more beneficial way of creating politics. Why should we be forced to communicate with those demons rather than force our attention against them by letting the Lord to rule us? So we have to really wisely ask that question. Who is ruling us in places where there is no God called to arise? And I don't think they are good beings. And that may be the root problem that we have today, that focus is on things that create conflict and division, and not things that our ancestors knew: peace, happiness, families, intergenerational connections, joy of life, and generally understanding that our lives are valuable because the Lord gave that life to us. So I think that the first thing that needs to be done today in the contemporary world is to look seriously at this question: who rules governments when God is not present in those governments? When we realize that this is thinking beyond our understanding of political forms, then we'll know that we have to get higher in our thinking that we are today. That it's much more complex than elections or individuals or particular politicians, that something got missing in politics that created that chaos and created that strange focus on wars and money and transfer of wealth to those who know how to confiscate it. So I think that the way for us to go into a high dimension of political vision is to invite the Lord to our politics. Now, some would say, oh, separation of church and state. This has nothing to do with that. It's about presence of God in politics. In other words, it's between kingdom of God and governments. Kingdom of God and governments. How the churches connect to this is what I'm not an expert in, so I'm not going to comment on that. But I know that I don't have to focus on the church to ask the Lord to be present in politics, because King David addresses the Lord directly. Let God arise. Let his enemies be scattered. Let them also that hate him flee before him. So I think we are at the point that we may have to address the error of our thinking that the state separated from the church must also be separated from the Lord. That's an error, because we know that the functions of the state are different than functions of the church, but it doesn't mean that God cannot be present in both, in the state and in church. So I think that was our error, this banning of thinking that God can communicate with politicians from his throne. Let's continue. Psalm 68. As smoke is driven away, so drive them away. As wax melteth before the fire, so let the wicked perish at the presence of God. So here we have a very powerful statement in which the king realizes that the presence of God is what clears the kingdom. He rules here on earth, the king rules here on earth from the wicked. So for my thinking, this is a big insight, because we think that the wicked can only be dealt with by laws, regulations, rules, courts, all kinds of prescriptions, all kinds of punishments, and all kinds of penalties. But this is not what presence of the Lord does. And how it works is a mystery. I don't know. But clearly, we don't need all of that state penalty apparatus to deal with the wicked. But if there is no God, of course, then that apparatus becomes the substitute. And who runs such an apparatus of penalties and punishments when God is not there? That's a good question. And I think that we can organize beautiful countries and beautiful cities and villages when we return to that power of the Lord to deal with the wicked, which can only happen if we understand that command, let God arise. And I think that is what the future will be for the earth, because the ways we are doing things right now are not working. We have to really be honest about this to ourselves. Wars, people who are seniors, disabled, veterans, are all terrified that their little incomes will be taken away from them. Pensions and social security funds being threatened by people who want to create all of those cryptocurrencies, casinos, scams, and swindles. We have to really understand that the state is very important, because the state is an institution that organizes life of people in the territory it rules. And without a good, virtuous state, the wicked take over. So we have to return to that power and authority of the presence of the Lord that Israel knows, that Christian empires knew, not only Roman but also Russian and Christian empires in Europe. And let the Lord arise. Let him arise in our political life. Let the Lord arise in my political life. I'm calling on the Lord publicly to arise in my life, as I understand that that is the right way. Thank you so much for listening to my remarks, and I believe God heard us and that He will arise in America, in Europe, in Russia, throughout the whole world. And then we will know how to feel safe in our hearts, in our houses, and in our